Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'd like to thank CCAM, housing manufacturer, produce wonderful housings and ports and strobes. Please head on over to ccam.com to check out their range of products. And while I'm in the mood for introduction, I'd like to introduce you to Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Morning, Adam.
Our regular,
morning here.
yeah, I bet it is. Yeah. And regular contributor, but also, as it happens, we have him on the hot seat today because he's also the chairman of the judging panel of the UPY competition, which has just announced its results. It just literally minutes ago. So,
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is I'm going to put Alex straight on the hot spot as I do and ask him how was judging UPY 2021.
Well, I guess first of all, as always, it's a real privilege to be asked by so many photographers to judge their work, and we're always incredibly grateful for the amount of entries that we get into UPY, into the Underwater Photographer of the Year competition. This year, it was a real pleasure to escape lockdown for for most of about a week and a half the judging took, and dive into those images and be reminded of the great places, the great spectacles that we see around the world as underwater photographers.
Yeah.
And so that side of it I really enjoyed, and I think that's something that I think everyone who can look at the collection this year can really get from it. But this morning I want to kind of park my UPY hat or DJ, as it were. I'm not wearing my announcement get-up anymore, and instead sort of come as sort of Alex the underwater photographer to look at the results. As we always do when we look at the results from these competitions, we like to sort of cast a critical eye over them.
Yep.
But I think I need to, because of the position I'm in, sort of clarify that a little bit in this case.
Yep.
I'm the chair of the judging panel for UPY. And, I fully endorse all these results. I had my, we work as a threesome in the judging room, myself, Martin, and Peter.
Yep.
And I have, all the opportunity in that judging room to make my case for my favorite pictures to win, the pictures I think are most deserving to win, as do the other judges. And we're always very open-minded, very fair-minded with each other, and listen to each other's arguments and ultimately decide on the favourites based on what we feel, and also how convincing the arguments are to make us change our minds.
Yep.
So if there's anything that I said, but as a result, you still end up with your favourites within the contest, which maybe, weren't able to rise to the very top of the pile. So, if I say, oh, this was a real favourite of mine, that, is kind of code for, I really would like this one to be even higher in the results, but, I couldn't convince the other judges. And actually, one to sort of give you a bit of an insight into the sort of behind the scenes in UPY, we write judges' comments for all the winning images, and we divide those evenly between us. But I think you can always get a slight insight into which judges favoured which images by which of us are writing the judges' comments, because we normally want to write judges' comments about the images that we particularly like. Yeah. And when you see, myself or Peter or Martin saying this was a real favourite of mine in the competition, that can also show that, for one of the judges, it was a real, incredible shot within that category.
Absolutely.
So, but all three of us stand entirely behind the results, and we all would choose, we all had our chance to choose them, and we debated long and hard over every single placing, and we're very happy with the results. So if at any point it sounds like I'm being negative on a picture, it doesn't mean I don't agree with that position. But there's also no point of us going through the pictures and just saying brilliant, 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 because all these photos are incredible pictures.
Yep.
But nonetheless. But yeah, what I thought we should look at today is maybe just the 6 main open international categories.
Yep.
And the winners and runner-up in there. There's obviously a lot of pictures in the UPY collection.
Yep.
And I certainly, with my judge's hat on, I always want the collection as a whole to be as strong as possible. I'm not always. I want to, as the chair of the judges, I think I always feel that my role is to make sure that the process is completely fair and every decision is debated properly.
Yep.
There's no, let's just get that. I make sure that everyone is happy with every decision, and when they're not happy, give them the chance to convince the other judges to change it to their way of thinking. And if they fail, we move on.
Yep.
But I always, for me, it's about that whole collection. And I'd really encourage anyone to go to the website, which is underwaterphotographeroftheyear.com, and look through our winners gallery, and also to look through the yearbook, which is a great way to browse the images.
I was going to say, so obviously the results are now announced, so you can view them on the UPY website, which I'll put the link into the comments, into the description of this episode. But also, and I mean, I have it. I've downloaded the yearbook as PDF. It's a fairly big PDF, so get a decent connection. But what you mentioned earlier, it's a visual feast. You know, it's something that will hopefully sustain you in these periods when we're possibly not getting underwater and taking as many pictures as we'd like. So yeah, they're all wonderful images. And so the overall winner, Alex.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to deal so much with the awards today. I thought it was just good to contract those names. But yeah, the winner of the wide angle category and also the overall winner is Rene Capozzola's picture Shark Skylight.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to keep my UPY hat off. But I have to say that you know we didn't know obviously who took this when we were judging, but I was thrilled to find out that we have had this year our first female overall winner of UPY.
Yeah.
I think there's always been loads of phenomenal female photographers, but they're not always as competition focused as their male counterparts. Yeah. And it's so really great to have a female winner. I think that would be very inspiring to a lot of up and coming of all ages female photographers underwater around the world. So that's really great. And yeah, I mean, I judge the competition. I think what I love about this image is it's not a simple frame.
No.
There's it's easy to take a graphically powerful image of a simple picture of a single subject and a background. What I love about this is there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to enjoy. Yep. Whether it's sunset, whether it's birds, whether it's sharks, whether it's reflections. Yet they're all handled so magnificently in this picture. There's a real, balance to it. You could almost crop a vertical out of this and it would still be a great picture. And then as a horizontal, you've just got so much to enjoy. So it's for me, a picture that I think will live long very well. Yeah. And that's something I'd say about the UPY judging, is that we do see the images a lot of times during the judging. So our choices are usually pictures that, maybe on first viewing they're great, but on second or third viewing they're still great, or they get even better. Yeah. And this picture, I think, I love that it manages to balance this complexity with still a strong graphic image and, beautiful light, beautiful scenes. And luckily for Renee, taken this year, she managed to get away out to French Polynesia and see these magnificent animals thriving.
So I think there's a couple of things for me. I think the first thing that stands out, obviously, is technically it's a very well produced image. Balancing the light of the sunset with the strobe light, perfectly done. Using the rectilinear wide angle to its advantage. So we're getting these really nice shapes of the sharks. And then putting it all through Snell's windows and getting the birds above the real. I mean, I think that she mentions in the description that this took quite a lot of planning, and I think that shows in the execution of it. But equally, once she's got in the water, she's got in the water with obviously this idea of producing an image like this, but then she's also got in the water and managed to pull it off, which, I think you mentioned the complexity of the image, but I think that's made it a very hard image to pull off.
So I think she went out every day and just worked on this idea day after day after day until it came together. Well, and I think a lot of it would have been, I've got something decent, right, I'll move on to something else now. Yeah. And actually keeping going is a great lesson. Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting, just from a Wetpixel Live perspective, is you wouldn't find the two of us recommending many people shot the Canon 11 to 24 on full frame. Here it is with a UPY. So. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, no, it's always
lovely picture.
It's shot on f20 though.
Yeah.
Okay. Runner up. Is Martin's picture of here calling it the Gothic Chamber. Yeah. And I think it's a great Cenote picture. There's no doubt that certain types of pictures tend to always rise to the top within wide angle categories in competitions. Yeah. Pictures with amazing sunbeams, pictures of cenotes, pictures of certain big animals. like for example, within the whales, you tend to get loads of amazing pictures of humpback whales because they're more photogenic than other species.
Yeah.
In the same way that, a cenote is also particularly photogenic when photographed as well as this.
Yeah.
I think what I like about this picture is that it is, is it a phenomenal cenote picture? It's got a freshness to it with the panorama, the fact that the photographer's pulled off a great panorama. That is also a very good composition in that, you've got that completeness of the whole picture going side to side. It's actually the front cover of the yearbook as well, cropped in. And I suggested that this would be a great cover, because I think one of the downsides of a letterbox shaped picture like this is it's very hard to enjoy the detail until you see it really big.
Yeah.
And putting it on the cover of the yearbook was a great way for people to actually be able to zoom in and actually have a good view at the detail of it. Yeah. So I like that it's a technically very difficult picture to take.
Yeah.
Difficult place to get to, and then also to add that complexity of adding a panorama, I felt was moving the game in a really exciting dimension. And I also really love the processing of it, with it kind of feels very like a snowy scene. And so, yeah, for me, I really like the picture right across the board. But, I'm very keen to hear what you think as well.
Well, I mean, I think that what you've mentioned earlier about the panoramic aspect of it. I mean, again, technically, I think this is a superb image. I think, pulling off the panorama in a cave, in the darkness, you can't see a whole lot what you're doing or what you're aiming at, and then managing to pull it up, obviously, so you've managed to get the panorama to work and get the detail in is amazing. I think he's certainly pushed his equipment to the absolute limit here. I think these types of images are very challenging equipment because they're in the dark. But then, equally, I think you have to he's managed to also compose a diver with an off-camera flash, in a really good spot in the image that leads the eye into it. So his composition, and again, I think possibly with a panoramic image, that's hard to do because it's in your mind's eye. You have to figure out how this composition is going to work, and that's hard to do when you're not actually seeing the whole image. So again, technically fantastic. I like you, Alex. I like the processing. I like the fact that it could be a winter wonderland scene as opposed to being in a cave. I'm a huge believer with cenote pictures that we need shadow, we need darkness, because we are in the dark, and I think it's really, really important. I think a lot of people with cenote imagery tend to use their camera's technology to open up the shadows, and I think actually pulling the shadows back in and using the light to draw your attention to the bits you want to draw to is very powerful. You certainly achieved that here, so yeah, really nicely done.
Okay, so we stroll on to macro.
Indeed.
So the winner of the macro category is this picture by
Galis
Waru. It's difficult to pronounce his name, especially when you see Norway after it.
Yeah.
It's I think this picture or a very similar frame of this picture was awarded in Ocean Art, and we already reviewed those entries, and we said in that it was a very impressive image to use a technique like this on a subject that is renowned for being an uncooperative subject, and it's also a subject that you can't coerce a pontos to be anything other than uncooperative. So they're always uncooperative. So to pull off, I think a challenging shot like this is very impressive. And beyond that, the result is very eye-catching, and I think the picture becomes more impressive when you actually dive into it and realize how tiny this animal is.
Yeah.
So for the public. So I think it's a really good, really strong winner. I would say that generally this year, with the macro category is often very dominated by Asian images.
Yeah.
And I think 2 years ago, I think 8 of the top 10 were all taken in Analau. And
Right.
with a lot of Asian diving closed during 2020,
Yeah.
I think that did impact quite a bit on this category, and it's got a very different feel to normal, this category, because a lot of Asian photographers weren't able to get out and dive, and a lot of Asian destinations that they frequent were closed off for diving as well. So it had a slightly different feel this year.
I think graphically it's very strong. I particularly like the color palette on it, obviously, which you've achieved by backlighting it and bringing the light through the actual animal, and I like that very much. My this is probably a general kind of issue that I have with Pygmy Seahorse pictures is that it's very hard. I know what size that is, but I think for many people who aren't aware of quite how tiny these things are, there's nothing in it that gives it a sense of scale. Now we're in the macro.
It could easily be that big, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. I know what it looks like. I know how hard that image was to pull off. But to me, I don't get that sense of scale from it. Now, it's hard to imagine how you pull off this image and show a sense of scale. I'm not suggesting that I know how to do that. But to me, it's a lovely picture, graphically very strong, of a very charismatic species that I know about. But I'm not sure that for the general public, they'll look at it and go, well, it's a weird-looking seahorse and move straight on.
They need to see the caption and see, 1 centimetre long.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm not.
I completely agree, and I think it's a picture that probably wouldn't be successful in a competition that wasn't judged by underwater photographers.
I quite agree. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, it's lovely, and graphically, it's very strong. So, yeah.
So the runner-up in that category is Larval Lionfish by Stephen Kovacs from the USA.
Yeah.
Had a lot of there's a strong dominance this year of USA photographers throughout the competition. This is Harry says was the first that wasn't American photographer this year, and I think that partly there's always been a lot of great American underwater photographers, and also I think but this year particularly I think the American photographers probably had slightly less restrictions than in other parts of the world, which may also explain why there's slightly more dominance.
This is shot on his home turf, so
was taken by the photographer close to home.
Yeah.
So very very eye-catching creature. Classic black water, but I like the fact that being a lionfish, that you've got that environmental aspect as well to the picture. In that this is actually this beauty is actually causing problems. I took from the picture. But it's obviously incredibly graphically strong. I don't think you have to. You can't just. I think it could probably do with slightly more eye contact.
Yeah.
And I think it's just there's enough angle on the face of it that you could have got more eye contact from it. It's not he's gone head on enough to get the graphic nature of the fins, but I think another frame you could have very easily had one of those, that near side eye actually connecting a little bit stronger. And I think perhaps then it could have been, could have stepped up one more place, slightly more eye contact.
I think, again, I'm pretty much echoing what you're going to say. I think it graphically really is very strong. The color palette, the pose, the symmetry of it, all of those are fantastic. And obviously it's an incredible moment. But I'm not that engaged by it. I find I don't find it very characterful, maybe the right way to describe it. Which again, maybe my photography, I'm a photographer, I'm an underwater photographer, I know about these things. So maybe that someone who has less of a bias, if that's the word to describe it, might be more engaged. But I don't. And maybe the eye contact would give me more engagement. It is beautifully shot, and technically perfect again, and graphically, you could use this to sell a product or whatever, no doubt about it. But I think I would just like to see the frenzied side of it, see what happened. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the wreck category.
Yeah.
And the winner here was Bowlander by Tobias Friedrich.
Yeah.
With this wreck in the Bahamas, which has been visited probably quite a lot, but probably not photographed very seriously because it's the sort of place people go to when they can't do something more interesting.
Yeah.
And so people don't tend to get so excited about it. It's very much for me a classic style image of small diver, big wreck with a very impressive wreck. And I think Tobias has won this category more times than I can remember, and certainly featured in it every single year.
Yeah.
Run UPY in the modern version of UPY. So I think it's he knows how to create great pictures. I don't think it's doing anything particularly inventive. It's just doing, if you do a classic shot really, really well, it can be an incredible photograph.
Yeah. And I think he's definitely playing to the location's strengths too. You know, there's the phenomenal blue clear water that's well, not unique to the Bahamas, but is certainly more prevalent in the Bahamas possibly than elsewhere. You know, and he's certainly, to get the scale of the wreck, to get the size of the wreck, to get the whole thing in that, you know, is and obviously putting the diver in the front gives a sense of scale. I think will be very interesting. If you cover the diver, it actually reduces the image into being much less interesting. So you know, I think that having the diver in shot gives it that sense of scale and that sense of you get appreciation of the size of the wreck. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a well shot image in and taking, you know, looking at the environment and going, well, I'm going to get this picture and going out and getting it. Yeah.
I think elsewhere in the category there was a lot of very creative wreck photography, and, you know, challenging deep wreck photography and things like that. But I think none of them quite reached this level as a graphic image. You know, as you know, and I think, and then runner up in the category was Reclaimed by the Ocean by Grant Thomas, which is a nighttime remote strobe lit photo of the I can't remember the name of the tank, but the anti-aircraft tank, the in Jordan.
M42, I think it is.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, the Duster. I remember now. Yeah, I have photographed it myself. Just I've forgotten. So yeah, I think it's, you know, it's striking, it's innovative, and, you know, I think, you know, taking on a wreck like this and shooting it at night, you know, is an attempt to move wreck photography forward, which is always something I think UPY likes, is to see images that are breaking the mold and trying to do things we haven't seen people trying to do before, rather than, you know, and I think particularly when you've got a very classic category winner, that often can help a very different type of picture end up in the runner-up spot.
To me, I think this image works a little bit too hard. I can see the graphic strength in it. But I think, to me, you know, and maybe this is me just, again, you know, the fact that I can actually see the output of the strobes, the remote strobes, the fact that the diver is slightly distorted by the actual the main light or whatever it is that's been used to backlight them. I think everything at the moment's on volume 12. I think turn it all down to volume 10. And I think it would probably be a stronger image for me.
I think that's a very fair observation. I do think that competition shots, part of pictures often being successful is showing the judges how clever you've been. Whereas actually outside the world of competition, often you want to be super clever without people really realizing it, just to give your image an extra level of polish. That make your work stand out. And I think, this is definitely a picture showing that you've been very clever. Right. I'm going to move on then to the next category, which is behavior. The winner of this category is by Carrie Amelia from the USA. And it's a detail shot, or a close action shot of a striped marlin hunting the bait fish there. I don't know what the bait fish are, but it's, I think, you know, it's one of the places that wasn't closed this year for travel was Mexico, and a lot of serious underwater photographers went down there to shoot the marlin and the bait balls, and there was a lot of pictures of these entered into UPY because those were one of the things people could get out there and do. And this picture was a very, very different take on it. Most of the shots are bait ball and marlin swimming around underneath, and this just stood out from all of that in terms of just really taking you to the heart of the action. And, you know, you just feel completely immersed in what's going on here in a way that those bigger scenes, although they're very elegant, don't give you the energy feel. And I think, you know, the nature of behavior shots is they're not always the best image quality wise, because they're, you know, catch that great moment, often not prepared and carefully you know, shot. And so there's always a bit of leeway from the judges. And I think this picture, you know, is kind of on the edge image quality wise. You know, if it was, you know, you can see it's shot on relatively high ISO because, you know, the bubbles really don't have any detail in them. And, you know, it's pushed against the limit in terms of aperture as well. But I think it gets away with all those things because it captures the action.
I'm a sucker for behaviour shots, and to me, this is right in there. I think it's a very unique take, and I can see that the image itself, in terms of the actual quality of the image, is probably not as high as some of the other images we've been talking about, but the moment is just amazing, and the fact that you've literally got this animal. You can almost feel the bait fish scattering out the way as it moves through the shoal. I think it's a phenomenal moment, and given that it is a behaviour shot, I think it's well captured. But yeah, I really like it. I think it's great. It draws me right into it. So yeah, I think it's really nice. Yeah.
And then runner up in the category is Face to Face by Jingong Zhang from China.
Mm.
And it's a picture of these two blennies duking it out.
Yeah.
Obviously, a very simple graphic image.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes these types of shots are created by moving the place where the blennies leave closer to each other. I know that's done a lot in California with the sarcastic fringe heads and things like that to get these types of shots, and then you move them away afterwards. I don't know the backstory of this one. They do obviously fight when they do find themselves close together. Yeah. I think I really like the graphic nature of this, the two eyes and the mouth. It almost makes a face in the middle of the picture, and that works very strongly for me.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that it's almost a mirror image as well. You could split this image in half, and it would almost look identical. It's graphically very strong. I think shooting against the black background was a really good decision. Obviously, I don't know what was going on in the background, but I think the photographer's obviously chosen to produce the image this way, and I think it's really worked. That's really brings that graphical nature and helps to highlight the color palette on it as well. So yeah, it's nice.
You can see it's been selectively lit from the top.
Yeah.
With the snoot, because you can see that the big shadows underneath them. So I think that's how they've separated from the background with snoots. I think it's a really nice use of snoot, where you're using the snoot to isolate the subject, whereas to the viewer, they actually don't really realise. It's not like you've done a spotlight. You're using the snoot in a very elegant way, which I like. Yeah. Okay, next category is portraits.
Yep.
And portrait category is very much about that character. I think question we always ask during the judging is that really a portrait? Is it just a great picture? And I think that this picture here by Keeper of the Seven Keys by Ryohei Ito from Japan, and taken close to where he lived. I think this is a really impressive portrait in terms of character. I like it's lit with an inward lighting, so that the fish is very lit and everything else is pretty much in silhouette, and I think that works very well for picture. For me, I would have actually liked the background a little bit brighter, and I think that I would have also probably done a little bit more work in post-processing to get even more out of that face.
Yeah,
I
agree.
think the whole picture just slightly dark.
I think the shadows on the actual face are not. I'm not sure about the background because I don't know what was there, but certainly I find that the actual features on the face, there's quite a lot of shadow on it, and I'd like to see those lit up a bit, and particularly obviously the eye that's behind is being lost slightly in the darkness. So yeah.
But these big wrasse, they have so much character.
Very characteristic.
And we've had them before. I don't think we've had one as a category winner in portraits, but we've certainly had one awarded in portraits before. They're one of those fish that just lend themselves to this type of photography.
Yeah.
And then also from Japan is and taken in Japan is this incredible matefish, which is a blackwater shot of just a very unusual weird fish, but I think works very well as a portrait from the deep, a portrait from another world. You've got the eye contact, you've got that kind of characterful mouth, and you've got this amazing fish with it. So I think very impressive subject. Not as characterful as the previous shot, but I think there's plenty of character coming through it, and it's a great portrait of an underwater animal.
I think the Blackwater stuff. I mean, I think the Blackwater stuff. That's terrible. The Blackwater images often lend themselves to portrait categories because the critters are so bizarre looking, and oftentimes that creates an engagement.
Mm.
I must confess though, I'm possibly because I'm in the fortunate position of seeing a lot of underwater imagery, I'm finding them less engaging now because I've seen a lot of them, and I'm not, I think now for me to be really kind of drawn by a Blackwater image, it's got to be something that completely blows my socks off. This is very nice. I get that it's a good portrait. It is beautifully shot, but to me, because it's a genre of images that I've seen quite a lot of, I think I'm suffering from Blackwater fatigue.
Well, interestingly, we didn't award many last year because we'd had so many, or we had them so solidly through the past. But I think this year we awarded more than last year, which was interesting. Only by a couple, but they were definitely more prominent in the collection. I haven't counted them up, so I don't know if that's true.
No, but again, it's not. It's not. It's just a general observation of my sort of reaction to Blackwater images now. I think whereas 4 or 5 years ago, everyone was unique and fascinating, and now that sort of fascination. There's lots of fascinating. This is a fascinating image, but I think in some ways I'm not as engaged by them as I was. Yeah.
Okay, and then the final category I thought we should run through this morning is the other big international one, which is black and white.
Yeah.
And the winner of that category with the cut is Diana Fernie from Australia.
Yeah.
And a photo taken in the Solomon Islands.
Yeah.
In the famous, I think I'll read the caption actually, Leroux cut. I know we have pictures from there every year.
Yeah.
And I think this particular one, really, rose up through the black and white ranks as being a real sort of standout classic use of black and white underwater to really, really enhance the subject.
And I'm Ansel Adams springs to mind. You've got this incredible use of the light beams. You've got the model in a great place. You've got the texture of the walls. I think it's you've got this beautiful kind of white light beams coming through the water. I think it's lovely. Again, technically beautifully shot. Interesting shot of the fisheye actually, which I wouldn't have guessed. But
I think you can get away with it in this cut because the centre of it is straight and then it doesn't show on the sides.
Okay.
I think one thing that's I think is quite funny about this shot, which I know from reading the caption of it, is that this wasn't Diana's model. It was the model of another photographer. And she cheekily took some photos by sort of just staying level with the other photographer as he was getting his wife to pose for the pictures. So I don't know. She doesn't say who the other photographer was, but somewhere there's someone out there probably not very happy.
Oops. But obviously, when we're talking about digital, all black and white is post-processed. And I don't know whether this was shot deliberately to black and white, but if it was, amazing vision. If it was a fortuitous circumstance, it still was very beautiful. So yeah, lovely, like it. Yeah.
And then the runner-up in this category is Time Travel by Martin Brohn again, and another cenote shot, but this time with I think a really interesting zoom blur on it, which just I think it's makes just something slightly different in that environment, makes the picture a little bit more interesting for a black and white shot. It becomes a much more interpretive image rather than just a straight shot of this is what a cenote is like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And with a lot of cenote pictures, I think that helped this picture stand out in that here's someone trying to do something maybe a little bit different to create something a little bit more artistically attractive.
And again, working with the fisheye, he's used the curvature of the fisheye to create this kind of more, this kind of gullet that you get kind of drawn into. I think it's a clever use of a fisheye in caves where normally probably rectilinear wide angles are normally stronger, but yeah, I think it's very nicely shot. Again, technically beautiful. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. So I think that's a good taster. I think all I would say as a closing comment is, we very much judge UPY with the intention of creating a wide collection of images. I think it would be really nice for us to revisit some of your favourites from it. So if you have a chance to have a look through, and
Yep.
pull out some of your favourites, and I'll, we're happy to discuss them. Because certainly my favourites aren't always in the top 2 in each category, and I think that's the fun of going through the collection as independently, is you can pick your winners from it.
Yep.
And I'm always very keen to make sure the collection is very diverse in terms of representing all forms and visions.
Yep.
And I think we should also have a look at the British categories for that section of the audience, simply because I think it was with a lot of people, certainly in lots of countries, forced to stay at home. UPY, being a British based competition, has British categories.
Yep.
And I think it's a particularly interesting year because I think there were more photographers than normal shooting in the UK. Yep. And I think that's made the collection of British pictures more diverse than we normally see, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely be putting out another couple of episodes, Alex, your time permitting. So yeah, definitely. So please check back for those. I think we should. I think we should stress that obviously this is they're all wonderful images, and that it's a beautiful collection. And please go to UPY. I'll put the link in the description, and download the yearbook. Visual feast. So thank you very much, Alex, and I'd like to thank CCAM as well for sponsoring this episode. Very much appreciated. And we couldn't do it without our sponsors. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to add comments, suggestions in the comments box below, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.